Hello and welcome. My name is Andy Salkeld and this is PhDear Diary, my video blog and diary during the time of undertaking a PhD in psychology at Leeds Beckett University. We are episode 25, 26. It's the first recording of August, and as I mentioned last time, August is a fairly dead month at universities. Most lecturers are on holiday, almost everything ceases, and everything just slows down. And what I said last week, when I said I was going to continue recording these, was I was going to take some time to kind of talk about what I've gone through, the journey, really just discuss what it's been like for the first 6 months, half a year, whilst doing a PhD. How I've changed, how I've grown, how I'm feeling, and where things are more than anything. Now, it's important to remember, none of this is scripted. This is just me feeling and experiencing and talking very off the cuff. And I do that to kind of keep it honest. And what I've done is I have been out this morning. I had a kind of board meeting in town with my company, Discover, and we were discussing everything there. We were talking about how things have progressed, how we're going to seek to raise finance, the opportunities that there are in the market, everything like that. And I've come back knowing that I have to record one of these because this is my way of being accountable to myself. What I want to talk about now is just how things have gone along this journey. I started a PhD because I enjoyed research. I did a master's conversion in psychology to understand more about my experiences with mental health in the workplace and everything like that. And as part of that, I did a research dissertation into mental illness stigma within professional services. Because along with all this, I am an accountant and so on, and I come from professional services. So I understand a lot of these things, and I wanted to put it all together. My lived experience, my work experience, and my new kind of field of study. Pika is obviously being incredibly playful in the background, so this is going to be the state of this kind of discussion. So anyway, I started a PhD because, one, I've always wanted to do one. I've always liked the idea of contributing more than just myself and my life, and the ability to create new knowledge that could help more beyond myself, etc., has always appealed to me. I've always wanted to do one, but I'd never wanted to do one in mathematics or physics, which is what I did my undergraduate in. And I never really wanted to do one in accounting. I was always more focused on kind of leadership and the interaction of people. And doing the conversion into psychology really helped me with that. I understand and want to do more around the people, because that's the side of business I love. And as I always talk about, it's the membrane between people and business that fascinates me. So anyway, I started this not really... I had an idea that I wanted to look at how organisations affect individuals. But I wanted to do something people hadn't really considered before. How, and as I started looking into this. I started looking at, right, people have looked at climate, they've looked at leadership, they've looked at all these aspects of organisations and how they impact individuals. So we know that leadership is one of the primary determinants of culture, and what leaders pay attention to, how they define resources, how they spread things out and everything, that helps define culture. And culture, no matter which measurement system you use, which kind of dimensionality, whether it's Hofstede or CVF or anything like that, all of those things all know that leadership can determine parts of culture within an organization. And that the way the culture is can influence the well-being, mental health, and behaviours, attitudes, and cognitions of people who work within the organisation. So people had done that. They'd also done climate, and climate and culture is just a different lens of looking at the same thing. Then they looked at structure. And by structure, this isn't what I would define as organisational structure, where I would look at, say, the legal structure and the group structure, or even the divisional structure. This is more about tall versus flat organisation, or organic versus mechanistic. This is one thing that I found very interesting, is hearing psychologists talk about business. They like to ascribe overly complex wording. And this is just something everyone or everything likes to do, is we describe things more complex to place ourselves in a position of power, to demonstrate that we understand things better than others. Where actually the most accessible knowledge is that which can be shared to everybody. And therefore, I will always try and break things down as simply as I can to help people. But yeah, so organic versus mechanistic. We looked at this. So we looked at leadership, culture, climate, structure. And I was like, well, how am I going to do something different when all this has already been done? And that's when it really hit me that the bit that was fascinating to me was how the financing of organizations changes things within them. And this is something that a lot of accountants or people in finance know but can't articulate or don't articulate, how the way finance operates actually runs throughout a business. So when you are doing monthly accounts, you will have a cut-off period that says this is when it cuts off, and sometimes this actually lasts a few days beyond the end of a month. No one will ever admit that it does, but it does. And when you close the accounts is actually when when the snapshot is taken for the balance sheet and everything like that, and for the period of profit and loss. And no one really talks about that, but it changes the way people operate. Because if you give people an extra 3 to 4 days, then they're not going to do anything until the end period. And slowly but surely, your processes change around the way finance operates. Now, there is always the argument as which comes first. When I have talked about finance and climate, or finance and culture, when I've talked about these and say, well, climate might mediate finance's interaction, or maybe finance, moderates. I'll get the word correct. No, mediates. Mediates is correct. I need to get these words right. Maybe finance mediates the culture of an organization. And what I always say is it's very chicken and egg, because financing of an organization, there is an external element of this. So if your organization is owner managed with some bank funding, etc., then very much that sole person, maybe they have a finance director, etc., they can create the culture within the business, and the finance may not set the tone. But as soon as, say, an external investment comes in, say private equity, venture capital, suddenly finance now maybe appoints a different finance director, and what that financing requires. So bank debt may require covenant reporting, may require various thresholds to be met, etc., governance, and may require certain information sent to the bank. Similarly, private equity may require different information, management reports, etc. They may have different metrics they want reporting, everything like that. And because that external finance has come in and appointed a finance director, and then that finance director implements processes and reporting and everything like that, that then gets given back to private equity, and the culture changes as a knock-on effect, is in that situation, you can see that external finance has caused cultural shift. But equally, does the culture in itself shift to accommodate the finance, or is the finance causing it? And there's lots of little things like that that when it's hard to understand until you explain it, and then when you explain it, you're like, well, actually, it is kind of chicken and egg. You don't know which way it's going to be. You don't know how it's going to evolve. And this is the bit where I was like, aha, that's new. No one's looked at this. No one's considered this. And as a result, that's where I'm going to spend my time. So I spent about 3-4 months figuring that out to begin with. Went down some different routes, considering different aspects of things, looking at them, etc., etc. But I'm happy with that because I understand finance and I'm learning about culture, climate, etc. And it's about just finding numbers. I'm going to have a drink just because I'm going to be talking and I am thirsty. So anyway, that's where we started. And I was always keen to do something new, because if no one has done it and you are pioneering it, it's very easy to demonstrate you have created new knowledge. Now, the hard bit here is about identifying whether that new knowledge is actually useful or not. Now, and I believe what I'm researching is useful because there are different ways to run finance teams. That private equity finance director may have a different style to a different finance director. And because finance touches so much of a business, and almost every decision is underpinned by financial metrics, the way finance is run has an impact beyond just the finance department. And the way it could be affecting people's lives is not fully understood. Now, from a personal perspective, we all understand. If we are in a poor financial position at home, we feel stressed. We are uncertain. We cut our costs. We limit our additional spends, etc. If we are in a period of wealth, we spend, we enjoy, we splurge, we go on holiday, etc. But when you don't necessarily have control over it, as in within an organisation, and your ability to do your job and have aspects of your job financed by the organisation, it changes. So I'd found what I wanted to do, and it took me a while to do this. It was about 4 months in when I did the confirmation of registration that I was like, this is it, this is what I want to do. Then I developed my first study. And that's what we've talked about over the past month or so. Whilst I was building up the Qualtrics website, I was defining the measures I was going to use, everything like that. And it's all kind of come together now. And now comes the hard bit, which is recruiting. But from a personal perspective, I've told the story of how we've got here. Shortcut at the end, because we've talked about that recently. But from a personal perspective, this has actually been very challenging for me because it's one of the things that it is entirely me, my thoughts, my process, internal. Everything is my decision, what I want to do. There is no right or wrong. This is very much a what I choose and what I justify, etc. So I've had to become confident in my ability to determine what's right. And that is challenging in itself, particularly as someone who does not carry a lot of confidence in himself. Being able to say, no, this is what I believe and this is what I am doing, and standing up for it. So that's pushing myself away. That's been quite a challenge. But what it has allowed me to do is actually become confident. Like, I have been able to articulate what I am studying and why it is important to tens of hundreds of people so far, and say, this is why you should pay attention to this. And I'm very comfortable in it now. I know what I'm doing. I'm just at the data gathering stage. And as soon as I have data, then I can start telling people stuff back. And that's the bit that I love, because I love telling stories. It's one thing that it took me a very long time to realize, but I love telling stories. I originally told them through numbers. As an accountant, I told the story of a company, how it grew, how it developed, how it became what it is today, and how it is going to keep growing in the future. I told stories. Then I did that for businesses, where I helped tell the management teams these stories of what is going on financially within the business. I was telling stories of change, of developments, and of futures. And then I literally told a story through writing a book. And now I am telling stories through data and through what I am researching and how it is working. And that is one of the things that I have loved doing. I love standing in front of people, giving presentations, telling stories. I love hosting commentary and mediating conversation, helping others to tell stories. One of my old friends and actual tattooist, when I met him, he said, "Hi, I'm Bob. I draw on people." And I always wanted that thing, that one word, that one liner. And mine is, I tell stories. And that is what excites me about this, is once I have data, I am going to be able to tell stories through the data. So I've gone through this very sharp period of working incredibly hard to get to this stage. And I'm now in this low period where I am beginning data collection. I am reliant on other people at this stage to see if they will help me with data collection. And then I am going to carry on with that and progress thereafter. But it hits my confidence every time. Every time I get to this stage of data collection, I'm like, what if I do not collect enough responses? What if I do not get enough information or enough data points to be able to analyze this correctly and scientifically? And that terrifies me. And that is one of the hardest parts of this. And it is punishment in a way. I am punishing myself at this stage, and it kills me every time. But it is part of the research process. It is. And there's nothing I can really do about it to change it, because I have to rely on other people to take my surveys and so on. So I just rely on communities and other people that want and believe in what I'm doing. And it's hard. I'm in a period of reflexivity because things have quietened down. And it's why I wanted to take this time to just regroup, say where I am, and to talk about it. I'm nervous. I'm nervous that over the next 4 months I do not collect the data. Or that if I do not collect the data, do I need to spend my own personal money to collect enough data to carry on, etc.? And that's the bit that is very nerve-wracking. And I am debating it constantly internally, as you can probably guess. Outside of the PhD, because obviously that's one journey that has got us up to here. Outside of that journey, I feel I've grown a fair bit over the past 6 months. Prior to the PhD, I had lost a lot of my life. I had lost, I'd gone through a period of losing everything, pretty much. I lost my wife. I lost my life. I lost my job. I lost my home. We were in lockdown where I feel I lost friends. And in fact, I can name friends I have lost or lost touch with, so on. And I lost an awful lot. And this gave me something back. And it's very hard to describe the difference in where I was 6 to 12 months ago to where I am now. But I feel better in myself. Genuinely. I feel happier and more content in my life than I have in many years. I'm still not comfortable. I'm still not confident in it, but I do feel better in it. I feel better in my own well-being. I feel healthier. Part of that is going to the gym every single day for 6 months. I have not lost a considerable amount of weight, but I feel healthier. I am able to do more, and that is good. I still have my problems, I still have my issues, but I am doing better than I have been. And it's important to sit back and reflect on these. I have gained a lot in my social life. I have pushed myself in a new hobby, in Warhammer. I have been to tournaments. I've done well at tournaments. Done badly in others, but I've done well. And I feel like it has given me confidence in my ability to play games and develop strategy, etc. So I'm learning and I'm growing, and it's something that it is important to sit back and think about what has happened over 6 months. And a lot has happened in the past 6 months for me. A lot has happened in the past 12 months for me. And I'm just using this month and these recordings to reflect on that. And one thing I want to say here, and this is because I am keeping notes for my own research, is I am in a position now where organisational financing, the financing and fund availability at the university, is affecting me personally. I've sent emails to the head of SciSen, Brendan. I have not yet heard a response. University is relatively quiet in August, as I've mentioned, but I am nervous as to whether funding will become available for my research above and beyond the £1,000 that is provided to all PhD students. I am nervous that there may not be additional funding, which could put me at risk of putting my own money in, etc., etc. It's about 2 weeks since. I'm just putting this out there that I am losing confidence in it the longer this lasts. And it is very much that kind of like the uncertainty is what makes it worse. And maybe that's a financial process thing, maybe it's a timing thing. But it's important to record these things because of what I'm researching. So I'm keeping a diary, or like every week I'm just making a note of it, how I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what I'm thinking about. Because when I come to write the PhD, this can be a chapter. What organisational financing, or the financing of a university, can do to an individual. And that's when it becomes very important, because I want to make sure that I have enough of these data points where I talk about, actually, I'm nervous about whether it happens. The very fact that they may not put money in to support above and beyond. Not that they are obliged to, but typically if people believe in your research or they believe in you, they are willing to back you. And by them choosing to not back me, should that be the availability, does that mean they are non-supportive or non-kind of understanding of the research and therefore will it be regarded less by the university when it comes to marking and things like that. So I am, and again, there is a personal side of this, which is why it needs to be recorded as a personal side. I am extrapolating what a financial decision could have other implications beyond just the financial decision. So because funding is often given one way or another, yes or no, and because funding is often given to projects that people want to support, develop and enhance, and not given to ones that they don't feel need supporting, etc., etc. Does that mean that if they do not provide additional funding, does that mean that my research is of less value than they are, and than others? And if it is of less value, does that mean it is less PhD worthy? And then suddenly it's very much a question of confidence, a question of, is it worth continuing? Because obviously I am paying fees to do this. And if they have no confidence in it, should I have confidence? Etc., etc. And these are just the very subtle things that go through, that are coming from a financial position through my individual perspective of that finance into my affective responses. And I'm just trying to make sure that I record as much of this as possible, so that when I look back on it at the end of the PhD, when I'm writing up and when I'm doing a kind of a qualitative study of the impact financing of an individual, I just want these timestamps. But yeah, anyway, I've had a pretty good 6 months learning more about myself, learning more about the world, getting involved with things again. It has been a nice period, and I hope that those who have watched this, I appreciate there are very, very few views on YouTube, but it is there not just for now, but for the future. I appreciate people who have seen this will have hopefully seen me grow in ability and confidence and so on throughout, and that there is a story to be told about me at the end of it. But anyway, we're coming up to about half an hour now, and that's way too long. But I just wanted to make sure I started this month with a bit of an overview, so that in future I can just talk about myself a bit more. So anyway, that's where we are. Thank you very much for tuning in and for listening. I do really appreciate it. And I will speak to you again in another week, when hopefully we'll have heard back from some people. So thank you very much, and I will speak to you then.